Donald Trump was intimately involved in plans to seize voting machines and stay in power in the waning days of his presidency. Also, and I'm sure this is just a coincidence, a bunch of his White House records were shredded and had to be taped back together. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Look, you guys, I don't want to talk about Trump, but I shouldn't have to. Normally, when someone stops being president, they go away, and then later they open their library and you say, damn, he got old, and that's it. But Trump never went away for a second, so we here at Late Night are on the coup beat. We've spent the last year or so chronicling the brazen criminality of Trump and his weirdo henchmen who tried to overthrow American democracy and are almost certainly going to try to do it again in 2024, as we call them the crooked, kooky, cuckoo, crew. If one of them, God forbid, ever buys a Cadillac, we'll have to start calling them the crooked, kooky, cuckoo, coop crew. The point is, we can't just forget that Trump and his movement tried to overthrow democracy, and they are, as we speak, actively laying the groundwork to do it again. Believe me, I desperately wish he'd vanish and we'd never hear from him again, but that's clearly not the case. He keeps hinting that he's going to run in 2024, and as nightmarish as it is to even contemplate it, there's a good chance he's going to be the Republican nominee. We have to be clear-eyed about his criminality. Now, some of you doubters out there might be saying, not so fast, Ron DeSantis, looking pretty formidable, and I'm sure he will continue to look that way until he gets on stage with Donald Trump, because he's just doing a knockoff impression of Trump, and given the choice, people always choose the real thing. I mean, who do you think would win a battle of the bands, U2 or four unknowns from Dublin doing U2 covers? One more time for U2! Now make some noise for us also! We probably should have gone first. Yeah, even their Irish accents are going to be bad. Point is, Trump won't go away, and he might run again. And if he does, he'll almost certainly try to finish what he started with his attempted coup last time around. And the GOP is either actively complicit in that slow-moving coup or ignoring it so they can spend their time throwing a racist temper tantrum over President Biden's pledge to appoint a black woman as the next Supreme Court justice.
Joe Biden's promise to choose a black woman as his Supreme Court nominee is divisive. It's un-American. Racial preferences, sexual preferences. First of all, it's illegal.
The way that the president has handled this nomination has been clumsy at best. It adds to the further perception that the court is a political institution like Congress.
The fact that he's willing to make a promise at the outset that it must be a black woman, I got to say that's offensive.
Right.
You know, black women are what, 6% of the U.S. population? He's saying to 94% of Americans, I don't give a damn about you. You are ineligible. He's saying, if you're a white guy, tough luck. If you're a white woman, tough luck. You don't qualify.
Hey, man, what the are you talking about? There have been more white guys on the Supreme Court than there are at a Patagonia clearance sale in Connecticut. Normally, to see that many white guys on the bench, you'd have to watch March Madness. Out of 115 Supreme Court justices, 108 have been white men. If you're a white guy who went to an Ivy League school, they call you in the day before graduation and say, all right, do you want to write for The Simpsons or be on the Supreme Court? White guys complaining about not getting on the Supreme Court are like Patriots fans complaining about the last 3 years. When's it gonna be our time? Anyway, back to the crooked, kooky, cuckoo. Personally, I might be less focused on the various investigations into Trump if Trump himself were less focused on them. I mean, he talks about him nonstop, and the New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman wrote recently that Trump's aides have always signaled that if the investigations progressed, that he would run for president again. Trump is so obsessed with the various investigations into his personal and business affairs, he ranted about them at length at one of his truckless monster truck rallies over the weekend.
They are viciously and unconstitutionally using the federal, local, and state governments to prosecute and silence politicians like me. For years, they've been going after my company, many years, using every trick in the book in an attempt to literally, if they can, put me in jail. They've subpoenaed more than 9 million pages, big company, of documents, and virtually every deal I've ever done, hoping to find a mistake, an error, misspelled words, a comma out of place, or anything else that they can find that might be just a little bit wrong. All these never-Trumpers working full-time in the prosecutor's office to get Trump because they couldn't do it before because they had nothing after all these years. Can you believe it? How do you like my life? You think I have a good time? Actually, I guess there's something going on because I do have a good time.
I'm not sure you do have a good life. If you did, I don't think you'd have to drag your supporters out twice a week to clap for you like some kind of geriatric Tinkerbell. Folks, if you clap for me, I'll come back to life and we'll put Hillary in jail for the computer thing. If you only believe. You sound like the guy who insists he has a great marriage, but also thinks we should start doing poker night twice a week. But yes, I agree. There's something going on. In fact, I guess that's the official medical diagnosis from looking at a CAT scan of your brain. Well, Mr. Trump, I've looked over the images, and there's no easy way to say this. There's something going on. My last doctor didn't see anything. Is that the same doctor who said you were in great shape? What's your point? Oh. Also, can we go back to this?
They've subpoenaed more than 9 million pages, big company, of documents, and virtually every deal I've ever done, hoping to find a mistake, an error, misspelled words, a comma out of place.
I don't think they need to hope to find a misspelling or a comma out of place. Looking for misspellings in a Trump document is like looking for Waldo in a book called Only Waldos. Most of your tweets look like you typed them left-handed in the middle of a sword fight. In fact, Trump's paranoia about what he calls mistakes in his personal and professional documents apparently manifested itself in very real ways, because when the National Archives handed over a trove of documents from the Trump White House to the committee investigating the January 6th insurrection, some of them had apparently been torn up and taped back together.
The National Archives, in a statement confirming that some of the documents that they received from the Trump White House that were of interest to the January 6th Select Committee came to them ripped up, shredded up, and they were forced to tape them back up before they were given to the January 6th Select Committee. Now, we don't know exactly which documents these are, but we do know that the former President Donald Trump had a habit of tearing up documents that in some cases former White House staffers had to tape back together. This was a practice that went back to as late as 2018, so it is significant that this was something that continued right up until the end of the Trump administration.
It doesn't surprise me that Trump treated official presidential records the way the rest of us treat credit card offers from Discover, or the way I treat autograph requests from my wife's niece. Get lost, Becky! She puts them on eBay and then complains to me when they don't get any bids. She's no angel. I would say shredding documents is an obvious sign of someone's guilt, but I'm sure Trump does it with everything. That's another 3 under round for Donald Trump. Tear this up for me into a million pieces. Also, let's all spare a thought for the federal employee who had to tape all of Donald Trump's presidential records back together, just getting Ziploc after Ziploc full of confetti soaked in hand sweat, and then trying to figure out which words to put together to form sentences. Piecing together Trump's notes is like fishing a bunch of magnetic poetry out of a garbage disposal. But it turns out Trump had good reason to rip up the evidence of all the crazy he did in the White House. Every day we find out more about just how close he came to pulling off a full-blown coup. Recently, we learned that his administration had drafted several executive orders to seize voting machines. And then this week, we learned that Trump was directly and personally involved in those discussions.
The New York Times reporting that 6 weeks after the 2020 race, which he lost, Mr. Trump directed his attorney Rudy Giuliani to ask the Department of Homeland Security if it could legally take control of voting machines in key swing states.
Donald Trump's advisors drafted more than one executive order to seize voting machines during the former president's final weeks in office. There was one order for the Pentagon. We had known about that. But overnight, CNN reporting on another for Homeland Security.
Trump also tried to persuade state lawmakers in Michigan and Pennsylvania to use local law enforcement to take control of the voting machines in those states, but they also refused to do so. Trump then moved on to the military.
Man, Trump tried everything. The Justice Department, Homeland Security, swing state lawmakers, even Rudy Giuliani. Of all people, I can't believe, and yet also I can believe that he had Rudy call the Department of Homeland Security. Although who knows with Rudy, it could have been a butt dial, which he's done before, for real. In 2019, Rudy butt dialed an NBC reporter. And it makes sense because Rudy always looks like he just sat on his phone and accidentally made an emergency call. 911, what's your emergency? There's a voice coming from my pants. Sir, that's me. My penis? One of the terrifying reasons Trump's coup didn't work is that Trump is a lazy moron. He tried every avenue he could think of, and he almost pulled it off. If he'd been more disciplined or more diligent, he probably could have done it. That's why we can't just move on and forget about it, because either Trump or someone even more ruthless will come along and try it again in 2024. And the GOP is already laying the groundwork for the next coup as we speak. Meanwhile, Trump is
using every trick in the book.
This has been a closer look. God's Love We Deliver cooks and brings over 2 million meals a year to men, women, and children living with HIV, AIDS, cancer, and other serious illnesses, and they need your help now more than ever. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button. Stay safe, get vaccinated. We love you.